A single mother stood over a table in an empty dining room staring at $5,000 in cash. Her daughter had cancer. The rent was 3 months overdue. The hospital had given her 10 days to pay for the next round of chemotherapy or they would stop treatment. No one was watching. The security camera in this section had been broken for the
What?
week.
That can't be
The manager
possible.
was
Are
drunk
you
at the bar,
absolutely
barely able to
sure?
stand.
Okay, I'm on my way.
$5,000, enough to survive another month, enough to keep the lights on, enough to buy her daughter a few more weeks of life. But the money belonged to a billionaire who had just received news that his son was dying in the ICU. 30 seconds to decide. Survival or conscience? When no one is watching, who are you really? Nora Wallace had worked at the Belmont Sterling for 18 months, long enough to know that the crystal chandeliers above her head cost more than she would earn in a lifetime. Long enough to understand that the people who ate here never looked at price tags, never hesitated. Before ordering the most expensive wine, never thought twice about leaving tips that could feed a family for a month. The Belmont Sterling sat on Madison Avenue in Manhattan, tucked between designer boutiques and private art galleries. The kind of place where reservations required 3 months of advance notice and a reference from someone who mattered. The marble floors gleamed under soft golden light. White tablecloths draped over every surface. The air smelled of truffle oil and old money. Nora moved between tables with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned to be invisible. Her feet ached from standing since 4 in the afternoon. Her lower back throbbed with a dull, persistent pain that never quite went away. She was 52 years old and her body reminded her of that fact every single day. But physical pain was manageable. It was the other kind of pain that kept her awake at night. That morning, she had received a phone call from St. Mary Hospital. The voice on the other end was clinical, detached, professional, in the way that only people who deliver bad news for a living can be. They needed $8,500 within 10 days, or they would have to pause Lily's treatment. Pause. That was the word they used, as if cancer took breaks, as if her 7-year-old daughter's life could simply be put on hold, while Nora figured out where to find money that did not exist. Lily had been diagnosed with leukemia 8 months ago. Since then, Nora's life had become a blur of hospital visits, medical bills, and sleepless nights spent calculating numbers that never added up. The treatments were working, the doctor said, but working cost money, and money was something Nora had never had enough of. She lived with her mother in a small apartment on the south side of the city. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, walls stained with moisture and age. The heating broke down every winter. The pipes rattled when you turned on the water. But it was home and the rent was cheap enough that Nora could almost afford it. Almost. Right now she was 3 months behind. The landlord had stopped being understanding 2 months ago. Now he just left notices on the door. Red ink, bold letters, final warning. Her mother, Ruth Wallace, was 68 years old. She helped watch Lily when Nora worked the night shift, which was most nights. But Ruth's health was failing too. Her hands shook when she held a cup of coffee. Her breathing sounded labored when she climbed the stairs. She refused to see a doctor because doctors cost money, and there was no money left. Some nights Nora came home to find both of them asleep on the couch. Lily's small body curled against her grandmother's chest. Both of them too tired to make it to bed. Both of them pale and fragile in the dim light. Those were the nights when Nora allowed herself a few moments of quiet grief. Just long enough to release some of the pressure building inside her chest. Then she would check on them one more time and go to bed, because tomorrow always came, and tomorrow always needed her to be strong. There was a memory that Nora tried not to think about too often, but it came to her anyway, especially on nights like this when the weight of everything threatened to crush her. When Nora was 12 years old, her father had been accused of stealing from the factory where he worked. Thomas Wallace was a maintenance worker, a black man in his 40s, hardworking, honest. The kind of father who came home tired every night but still had energy to help with homework, to tell stories to make his daughter laugh. But when $1,000 went missing from the foreman's office, the owner decided that Thomas Wallace must have taken it. No evidence, no proof, just suspicion and the color of his skin. Her father had protested. He had begged them to investigate properly. He had sworn on everything he held sacred that he was innocent, but no one believed him. They fired him, blacklisted him, made sure he would never work in the industry again. Nora watched her father change after that, watched the light go out of his eyes, watched him sit at the kitchen table for hours staring at nothing, unable to understand how the world could be so cruel. 6 months later, Thomas Wallace hanged himself in the garage. Nora had been the one to find him. She was 12 years old, home from school or early because of a half day. She called for her father, checked the house, then went to the garage. And there he was, hanging from a rope tied to the rafters. The image was burned into her memory forever. The way his body had looked. The note he left behind, written in shaky handwriting. Just 4 words. I did nothing wrong. 2 weeks after the funeral, the real thief was caught. A white supervisor who had been embezzling money for months. He confessed, apologized, got a slap on the wrist, and kept his pension. No one apologized to the Wallace family. No one acknowledged the injustice. Thomas Wallace was already dead, and dead men do not need apologies. That was the day Nora learned that doing the right thing did not always protect you, that being innocent was not enough, that the world was not fair, and fairness was not something you could count on. But she had also learned something else, something her mother had told her at the funeral, gripping her hands so tight it hurt. Your father died knowing he was innocent. He went to his grave with his integrity intact. They took everything from him, his job, his reputation, his life. But they never made him into a liar. They never made him into a thief, and that mattered, at least to him, at least in those final moments. Nora had not understood it then, but she understood it now. 18 years later, history would repeat itself. Nora was 34 years old and working as a senior financial auditor at Meridian Trust Bank. She had fought hard to get there, put herself through community college while working 2 jobs, studied late into the night, proved herself again and again in a world that assumed she did not belong. She was good at her work, very good. She had a talent for spotting patterns that others missed, for finding discrepancies in financial reports, for following money through complex transactions until she understood exactly where it had gone. That talent made her valuable. It also made her dangerous. When she discovered that the CFO was embezzling $90 million through a series of shell companies and fraudulent transactions, she did what she had been trained to do. She documented everything, built an airtight case, and reported it to the board of directors. She expected them to be grateful, to take action, to fix the problem. Instead, the CFO accused her of being the embezzler, claimed that Nora had fabricated the evidence to cover her own crimes, used his connections and his power and his position to destroy her credibility before she could destroy his. And the board believed him, because he was a white man in an expensive suit with decades of connections. And she was a black woman who had worked her way up from nothing. They fired her, blacklisted her, made sure no one in the industry would ever hire her again, just like her father. Nora fought back, hired a lawyer she could not afford, tried to prove her innocence. But the CFO had covered his tracks well. By the time the investigation was complete, the evidence had been destroyed. The witnesses had been intimidated, and Nora was left with nothing but debt and a reputation in ruins. Her husband left her, could not handle the scandal, could not handle being associated with someone the world had labeled a criminal. She lost her house, lost her savings, lost everything she had built. And for 18 years, she had been rebuilding from nothing. Working as a waitress because it was the only job she could get. Surviving, enduring, trying to be someone her daughter could be proud of even when the world kept telling her she was worthless. Tonight, the private dining room at the back of the Belmont Sterling was reserved for a celebration. Nora had seen the guest list when she came in for her shift. 15 people hosted by Harrison Cole. The name meant nothing to her at first. Then she saw his photo on the reservation card. Harrison Cole, tech billionaire, CEO of Cole Dynamics, net worth estimated at $4.7 billion. The dinner was to celebrate a merger, $2.5 billion, the kind of number that existed only in headlines and fantasies, the kind of number that had nothing to do with real life. Nora had served tables like this before. The guests never looked at her directly. They spoke over her head, around her, through her. She was part of the furniture, a function, a pair of hands that delivered food and cleared plates and refilled water glasses. She had learned not to take it personally. Esther Brooks, who had worked at the Belmont Sterling for 20 years, had taught her that lesson early on. Esther was 46 years old, heavy-set with graying hair she kept pulled back in a tight bun. She had raised 3 children on a waitress's salary and buried a husband who drank himself to death. Nothing surprised her anymore. Keep your head down, Esther had told Nora on her first week. Do your job, go home. These people live in a different world. Don't expect them to see you. Don't expect them to care. Just take their money and feed your kids. Dion Harris, the bartender, had a different philosophy. He was 29, handsome in a careless way, with a quick smile that never quite reached his eyes. He had been working at the Belmont Sterling for 2 years, and he had developed a particular kind of bitterness toward the wealthy clients they served. "They're not better than us," he would say, polishing glasses with exaggerated care. "They just got lucky, born into the right family, met the right people, made the right bets. That's all success is. Luck dressed up as merit." Nora did not agree or disagree. She simply worked. Tonight, like every night, she focused on the tasks in front of her, refilling water glasses, bringing out appetizers, clearing plates. The party in the private room was loud with laughter and champagne toasts. Harrison Cole sat at the head of the table, a tall man in his late 40s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of confident posture that came from decades of being the most important person in every room. She noticed him because he was the only one not laughing. While his guests celebrated around him, he sat with his phone in his hand, staring at the screen, with an expression she could not quite read. Distracted, maybe, or worried. It was hard to tell with men like him. They wore their emotions like expensive suits, carefully tailored to reveal nothing. At 9:52, his phone rang. Nora was clearing plates from a side table when she saw him answer. She did not hear what the voice on the other end said, but she saw the effect it had. Harrison Cole's face went pale. His hand gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair, and said something to the guest nearest him. Then he walked quickly toward the exit. He did not stop to shake hands. He did not pause to say goodbye. He moved like a man who had just received news that the world was ending. And on the table where he had been sitting, he left behind a stack of bills. 50 $100 bills fanned out like a hand of cards. $5,000 in cash. Nora did not notice the money at first. She was busy collecting dishes, stacking them carefully on her tray, moving with the mechanical precision that came from years of practice. It was only when she reached for the napkin beside Harrison Cole's plate that she saw it. $5,000, crisp, clean, the kind of money that had never been crumpled in a pocket or smoothed out after being found in the bottom of a purse. She looked around. The other guests were still absorbed in their conversations, oblivious to their host's sudden departure. Mr. Clayton, the manager, was at the bar. She could see him from here. 3 whiskeys deep and showing no signs of slowing down. The security camera in this corner of the room had been broken for a week. She knew because Clayton had complained about it every single day, promising to call someone to fix it and never following through. No one was watching. Nora's hand hovered over the money. Her heart pounded against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. $5,000, enough to pay for Lily's medication this month. Enough to buy a few more weeks with the landlord. Enough to keep her head above water just a little longer. She thought about what Esther always said. These people don't notice. They don't care. $5,000 to a billionaire was like a penny to her. He would never miss it. He probably would not even remember leaving it behind. Her fingers touched the edge of the bills. The paper was crisp and clean. New, untouched. She could take it, right now. No one would ever know, except her and Lily. Nora's mind drifted back to a conversation she had with her daughter 3 weeks ago. They were sitting in the hospital waiting room. Lily was between treatments, her small body wrapped in a blanket that was too big for her. Her head was bald from the chemotherapy. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, but her eyes were still bright. "Mama," Lily had asked, "why are some people rich and some people poor?" Nora had not known how to answer that question. She still did not. "I don't know, baby," she had said finally. "Life isn't always fair. But is it because rich people are better?" No. The word came out harder than she intended. "No, sweetheart. Money doesn't make someone better. It just means they have more money." Then what makes someone good? Nora had looked at her daughter for a long moment. 7 years old, fighting for her life, still trying to understand the world. "The choices we make," Nora had said softly, "especially when no one is watching. That's what makes us who we are." Lily had nodded, satisfied with that answer. Then she had fallen asleep against Nora's shoulder, exhausted from another round of poison pumped into her veins to kill the cancer that was trying to kill her. Now standing in this empty dining room with $5,000 in front of her, Nora heard those words echoing in her head. The choices we make when no one is watching. There was one more memory, one she had tried to forget but could not. 4 years ago, before Lily got sick, Nora had been working at a diner in Brooklyn. It was a slow Tuesday afternoon. A customer had left $300 on the table by accident. Nora had seen it, picked it up. And instead of calling after the customer, she had put it in her apron pocket. $300. Not enough to change her life, but enough to pay the electric bill that month, enough to buy groceries for 2 weeks, enough to matter. She had kept it. And for 4 years, that decision had haunted her. Every time she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw someone who had taken something that did not belong to her. Every time Lily asked her about right and wrong, Nora heard the voice in her head whispering, liar, hypocrite, thief. $300, such a small amount, but it had cost her something far more valuable. It had cost her the ability to look herself in the eye without flinching. She could not do it again. Not now, not with Lily watching, not with everything her father had died for still weighing on her conscience. If she took this money, if she bought her survival with something that did not belong to her, she would lose the only thing she had left, herself. 30 seconds passed, maybe longer. Time had become elastic, stretching and compressing in ways that made no sense. Then Nora picked up the money. Esther exhaled with relief. Good girl, you're doing the right thing. But Nora did not put the money in her pocket. Instead, she folded the bills carefully, tucked them into her apron, and walked over to where Mr. Clayton sat slumped at the bar. The man who just left, she said, the one who hosted the party. What's his name? Clayton looked up bleary-eyed and confused. Cole, Harrison Cole. Why? Nora did not answer. She turned and walked back toward the dining room. Esther stared at her in disbelief. What are you doing? I'm going to return it. Return it to a billionaire, Nora. Have you lost your mind? It's not mine, Esther. Neither is the cancer eating your daughter alive. Esther's voice cracked. Neither is the debt that's drowning you. You think God put that money in front of you by accident? This is a sign. Take it. Nora shook her head. She could not explain it, not in words that would make sense to Esther or anyone else. All she knew was that if she kept this money, if she saved Lily's life by stealing from someone else, she would be teaching her daughter that survival justified anything, that morality was negotiable, that who you were did not matter as long as you got what you needed. And if she taught Lily that lesson, what kind of person would her daughter become? Lily was watching, not literally, not tonight, but in the way that children always watch their parents, learning who to become by observing who their mothers and fathers already were. Nora could not give Lily much. She could not give her wealth or security or even certainty about tomorrow. But she could give her this. She could show her that some things mattered more than survival. That integrity was not something you abandoned when life got hard. That the person you chose to be in the dark when no one was watching was the person you actually were. Dion laughed from behind the bar. She's really going to do it. She's really going to give back $50,000 to a man who wipes his ass with $100 bills. That's not integrity. That's stupidity. Nora ignored him. She clocked out, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the night. The rain had started while she was inside. Cold, heavy, the kind of rain that soaked through your clothes in seconds. She had no umbrella, but she had a name, and she had made a decision. Now she just had to find Harrison Cole. The rain fell harder as Nora stood at the bus stop pulling out her phone. The screen was cracked from when Lily had accidentally knocked it off the kitchen counter 3 months ago. The replacement would have cost $80 she did not have, so she had learned to navigate around the spiderweb of broken glass. She typed Harrison Cole into the search bar and waited for the results to load. His face appeared immediately. The same silver-haired man she had seen leaving the restaurant in a panic just an hour ago. Tech billionaire, CEO of Cole Dynamics. Net worth estimated at $4.7 billion. The numbers meant nothing to her. Abstractions so large, they ceased to have any real meaning. What was the difference between 1 billion and 4 billion? Both were incomprehensible. Both existed in a world so far removed from her own that they might as well have been fairy tales. She scrolled through article after article looking for something useful. His company headquarters was downtown, but it was nearly 11 at night. No one would be there. His home address was not public, just vague references to an estate somewhere in the hills outside the city. She had no car, no money for a taxi, and the buses did not run to neighborhoods like that. She was about to give up when a news alert caught her eye. It had been posted 23 minutes ago. Son of tech billionaire Harrison Cole in critical condition following car accident, currently receiving treatment at St. Mary Hospital. St. Mary, the same hospital where Lily received her chemotherapy, the same building where Nora had spent countless hours sitting in waiting rooms, filling out insurance forms, bargaining with billing departments, praying to a God she was not sure she believed in anymore. But there was something else in the article, something that made Nora's breath catch. Sources close to the family suggest the accident may not have been accidental. Ethan Cole, 20, has reportedly struggled with depression following his parents' divorce 3 years ago. Not an accident, a suicide attempt. Harrison Cole had not just received news that his son was injured. He had received news that his son had tried to kill himself. And Nora had just overheard that phone call, had seen the devastation on Harrison's face, had watched him leave like a man whose world was ending. Because it was. The last bus of the night was pulling up to the stop. Nora climbed aboard, paid her fare with quarters she had been saving for laundry, and found a seat near the back. The ride would take 40 minutes with all the stops. She leaned her head against the window and watched the city lights blur through the rain. Esther's voice echoed in her mind. This is a sign. Take it. Dion's laughter followed. That's not integrity. That's stupidity. Maybe they were both right. Maybe she was a fool for chasing a billionaire through the rain to return money he would never miss. Maybe her principles were a luxury she could not afford. But every time she thought about keeping the money, she saw two faces. Her father's face, hanging in that garage, dead because the world had decided his integrity meant nothing. And Lily's face, bright-eyed and curious, still believing that good people existed, still trusting that her mother was one of them. What would she tell that girl if she kept the money? How could she look into those eyes and say that sometimes stealing was acceptable, that morality was conditional, that who you were depended on, how desperate you became? She could not. So she rode the bus through the rain clutching $5,000 that did not belong to her and hoped that doing the right thing would mean something. Even if it cost her everything, the bus let her off 3 blocks from the hospital. She walked the rest of the way. Her shoes squelched with every step. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her uniform clung to her skin cold and heavy. By the time she pushed through the hospital's main entrance, she looked like someone who had been pulled from a river. The woman at the reception desk glanced up, took in Nora's appearance, and frowned. Can I help you? I need to see Harrison Cole. The receptionist's expression shifted from mild annoyance to guarded suspicion. Mr. Cole is not receiving visitors. Are you family? No, but I have something that belongs to him, something he left behind. You can leave it with me. I'll make sure he gets it. Nora shook her head. I need to give it to him personally. That's not possible. Mr. Cole has requested privacy. If you're not family, I can't let you through. A security guard had noticed the exchange. He was walking toward them now. A large man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that suggested he had seen every possible variation of trouble and was no longer impressed by any of it. His name tag read Jackson. Is there a problem here? He asked. This woman wants to see Mr. Cole, the receptionist said. I've told her that's not possible. Jackson turned to Nora. Ma'am, visiting hours are over. If you don't have authorization, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Nora stood her ground. She was cold. She was tired. She was soaked to the bone. But she had not come this far to turn back now. My daughter is a patient here, she said quietly. 4th floor, pediatric oncology. Lily Wallace. I've been coming to this hospital every week for 8 months. I know what it's like to sit in a waiting room and wonder if your child is going to survive the night. She looked directly at Jackson. That man upstairs is going through the same thing right now, and I have something he needs. Jackson studied her for a long moment. Something in her voice and the exhaustion etched into her face made him hesitate. Before he could respond, the elevator doors opened behind them. Harrison Cole stepped out. He looked nothing like the polished billionaire from the magazine covers. His tie was loosened, his shirt untucked, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. He moved like a man walking through a fog, barely aware of his surroundings. Nora stepped forward. Mr. Cole. He stopped. Confusion flickered across his face. Do I know you? No. She reached into her coat and pulled out the folded bills, wet but intact. You left this at the restaurant tonight. $5,000. Harrison Cole stared at the money as if he did not recognize what it was. Then he looked at her. Really looked at her soaked uniform, her dripping hair, the cracked phone still clutched in her other hand. You came all the way here, he said slowly, in the middle of the night, in this weather, to return $5,000. It doesn't belong to me. He let out a sound that might have been a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Do you have any idea how much money I have? $5,000 is nothing. It's less than nothing. I know, Nora said, but it's everything to me, and that's exactly why I can't keep it. Harrison Cole fell silent. For the first time since she had approached him, he actually looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Why? The question came out almost desperate. Why does it matter? Nora thought about Lily, about the lessons she wanted to teach her daughter, about the kind of person she wanted to be. Because my little girl is upstairs in this hospital, she said quietly. Fourth floor. She has leukemia. And if I teach her that it's okay to take things that aren't yours when nobody's watching, then what am I really teaching her about life? Something in Harrison Cole's composure cracked. His shoulders sagged. Suddenly he looked less like a billionaire and more like a tired, frightened father. My son is in the ICU. Oh, he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. They're saying it wasn't an accident, that he did this to himself. He rubbed his face with both hands. 3 years. He hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. Not since the divorce. Not since I chose my company over my family. And now he's lying in a bed with tubes coming out of him, and I don't even know if he wants me there. His voice broke. What if he doesn't want to see me? What if showing up just makes it worse? Nora did not know what to say. She had expected him to take the money and dismiss her, to return to his private world of wealth and privilege where people like her did not exist. She had not expected this, had not expected him to be human. Go to him, she said finally. It doesn't matter if he wants you there or not. You need to be there. That's what parents do. We show up, even when it's hard, even when we're not sure we're wanted. We show up because our children need us, even if they don't know it yet. Harrison looked at her for a long moment. Then without a word, he turned and walked back toward the elevator. Nora watched him go. She stood in the lobby for another minute, the money still in her hand, before she realized he had not taken it back. She walked to the reception desk and placed the bills there, careful to smooth them out. Please make sure Mr. Cole gets this. Then she walked back out into the rain. The next week passed in a blur of exhaustion and worry. Nora returned to work at the Belmont Sterling the following evening. She clocked in at 4 in the afternoon, same as always, put on her apron, tied her hair back, moved between tables with the same quiet efficiency she had perfected over 18 months. But something had changed. Esther treated her differently now. Not with anger exactly, but with a kind of sad resignation, as if Nora had confirmed something Esther had always suspected about the cruelty of the world. They worked side by side in silence the way they always had. But now there was distance between them, an invisible wall that had not been there before. On the third night, Esther finally spoke. They were wiping down tables after closing. The restaurant was empty except for the two of them and Dion, who was counting bottles behind the bar. You had a chance, Esther said quietly. Her voice was heavy with something that sounded like grief. A real chance, and you threw it away for what principles? She stopped wiping and looked at Nora directly. You can't pay rent with a clear conscience, Nora. You can't buy medicine with good intentions. Nora had no answer for that. Some nights, lying awake in her cramped apartment, she wondered if Esther was right, if she had made a terrible mistake, if her principles were just a luxury she could not afford. Dion was more predictable. He never let her forget it. Hey, Saint Nora, he would call out whenever she passed the bar. Any billionaires leave you money today? No. Shocking. She learned to ignore him, but ignoring her own doubts was harder. The hospital still called about the bill. The landlord still sent notices. Lily still needed treatment that Nora could not afford. Nothing had changed. The $5,000 was gone, delivered to a man who did not need it. And Nora was exactly where she had been before. Drowning, desperate, running out of time. Maybe Esther had been right. Maybe she had sacrificed her daughter's life on the altar of her own self-righteousness. Maybe being good was just another word for being a fool. But there was something Nora had not told Esther. Something she thought about late at night when the doubts threatened to overwhelm her. That memory of the $300, 4 years ago at the diner in Brooklyn. The customer who had left it behind. The moment Nora had picked it up and put it in her pocket. She remembered how it had felt in that instant. The relief. The justification. The voice in her head telling her that she needed it more than the person who had left it behind. That she deserved it. That it was practically hers anyway. And she remembered what came after, the guilt that had followed her for 4 years. The way she could not look at herself in the mirror without seeing a thief. The way every conversation with Lily about honesty felt like hypocrisy. The way that $300 had cost her something far more valuable than money. It had cost her peace. For 4 years she had carried that weight. Every time she looked at her daughter, she wondered what Lily would think if she knew. Every time she told Lily to be honest, to be good, to do the right thing, she heard the voice in her head whispering, hypocrite. $300. Such a small amount in the grand scheme of things. But it had hollowed her out from the inside, made her feel like a fraud, made her question whether she was the person she wanted to be or just someone pretending. She had promised herself she would never do it again, that the next time she was faced with that choice, she would choose differently, even if it hurt, even if it cost her everything. Because what was the alternative? To teach Lily that survival justified anything, that morality was negotiable, that who you were did not matter as long as you got what you needed, to become the kind of person who looked at her daughter and saw an excuse rather than a reason to be better. Nora could not do that, would not do that. Even if it meant losing everything else, she could not lose herself. Not again. 5 days after the night at the hospital, everything fell apart. It started small, just a slight elevation in temperature that the home thermometer barely registered. Nora checked Lily's forehead when she woke up that morning. Warm but not alarming. She gave her daughter children's Tylenol and told herself it was nothing. Just a minor bug. Kids got fevers all the time. By noon, Lily was burning up. Ruth called Nora at work, her voice trembling with fear. Something's wrong. She's shaking. Her whole body is shaking. And she's not waking up properly when I try to talk to her. Nora left in the middle of her shift. Did not bother to explain to Mr. Clayton. Did not care if she got fired. She took a taxi she could not afford because the bus would have taken too long. Used the emergency credit card she had promised herself she would never touch unless it was literally life or death. This was life or death. By the time she reached the apartment, the ambulance was already there. Two paramedics were loading Lily onto a stretcher while Ruth stood in the doorway crying silently. Her mother looked 10 years older than she had that morning, smaller, more fragile. Nora climbed into the ambulance and held her daughter's hand. Lily's skin was hot to the touch. Her eyes were half closed, unfocused. Her breathing came in short, labored gasps. "Hold on, baby," Nora whispered. "We're almost there. Just hold on." But Lily did not respond. She was somewhere else, somewhere far away that Nora could not reach. At the hospital, they rushed Lily into the emergency room while Nora was left to fill out forms and answer questions and wait. Always waiting. That was what her life had become. An endless series of waiting rooms and unanswered questions and fears too large to name. The doctor who finally came to see her was a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a careful voice. Dr. Amelia Sutherland. Nora had seen her before during Lily's regular treatments. "Your daughter has developed a serious infection," Dr. Sutherland explained. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Her immune system is severely compromised from the chemotherapy, which makes her extremely vulnerable to complications like this. We need to start her on a specialized course of antibiotics immediately." "Then do it," Nora said. "Whatever she needs." Dr. Sutherland hesitated. That was when Nora knew. Before the doctor even spoke, she knew what was coming next. "The medication she requires is very expensive. $3,400 for the full course of treatment. I've checked with billing, and your account is already significantly overdue. They're requiring payment before we can proceed with treatment." The words hit Nora like a physical blow. She felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. The walls seemed to close in. Her vision narrowed to a single point of terrible clarity. "You're telling me you won't treat my daughter because I can't pay? I'm telling you that's what the administration is requiring." Dr. Sutherland's voice was thick with something that might have been shame. "I'm sorry, I wish I could do more, but my hands are tied." Nora stood there in the hallway, unable to move, unable to think. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped steadily. Life going on as if the world had not just ended. "How long do I have?" Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. 24 hours. After that, we'll have no choice but to delay treatment." Delay. That word again. As if time meant nothing. As if her daughter's life could be paused like a video while Nora figured out where to find money that did not exist. Nora thought about the $5,000, about the choice she had made in the rain, about whether she had just killed her own daughter because of pride, because of principles that meant nothing in the face of death. She spent the next 24 hours making phone calls. She called everyone she knew, everyone who might have money to spare. Her mother had nothing. The few friends she still had from before were as broke as she was. The church offered prayers but could not offer cash. The charitable organizations she contacted had waiting lists that stretched for months. She tried applying for emergency loans, was rejected by 6 different lenders. Her credit was destroyed, her income too low, her debt too high. The algorithms that decided these things had already determined she was not worth the risk. She sat in the hallway outside Lily's room, staring at the wall, and this time she let herself break completely. Not the quiet, controlled tears she allowed herself late at night when no one was watching, but deep body-shaking sobs that came from a place so raw she had not known it existed. If she had kept the $5,000, she would have had something, not enough to cover everything, but something. A foundation, a starting point, a chance. Instead, she had given it back to a man who probably never thought about her again, who had returned to his world of private jets and board meetings and problems that could be solved with money. While she sat here in this hallway watching her daughter struggle to breathe, knowing that she had chosen principles over survival. Maybe Esther was right. Maybe Dion was right. Maybe she had sacrificed Lily's life because of her own pride, her own need to feel righteous, her own selfish desire to be the kind of person who did the right thing. Maybe being good was just another way of being cruel. The hours crawled by. 23 hours, 22, 21. Ruth arrived at the hospital in the late afternoon. She looked older than Nora had ever seen her. Her face was lined with worry and age, and a lifetime of struggles that had never quite been resolved. She was carrying a small envelope in her hands. "I know it's not enough," Ruth said quietly. She pressed the envelope into Nora's hands. "But it's everything I have." Nora opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were 24 $10 bills, $240, her mother's savings from 30 years of work, coins collected in jars, bills tucked away in drawers. The emergency fund Ruth had been building since Nora was a child. "Mom, I can't." "Yes, you can." Ruth's voice was firm. She took Nora's face in her hands. Her palms were rough and worn from a lifetime of hard work. "Listen to me, baby girl. I raised you to be strong, to be honest, to be good. And you are all of those things. You've always been all of those things, even when it cost you." Tears were streaming down Ruth's face now. "I've watched you struggle for 18 years, watched you rebuild yourself from nothing after that bank destroyed you, watched you work yourself to the bone to give Lily everything she needs. And I've never been more proud of anyone in my entire life." She pulled Nora close. 30 years I've been your mother. I've seen you at your strongest and your weakest. And I'm telling you right now, you did the right thing, returning that money, teaching Lily what integrity looks like. That's who you are. That's who your father raised you to be. And I will not let you doubt that. Not for 1 second. Nora held her mother and cried, and for the first time in days, the tears felt like something other than despair. They felt like love, like connection, like the reminder that even when you have nothing, you still have the people who see you for who you really are. "Take the money," Ruth said. "Yes, it however you can, and know that no matter what happens, you did right by your daughter. You showed her what it means to be a good person. That's worth more than any amount of money." 16 hours before the deadline, something impossible happened. Nora was sitting in the hallway staring at her phone, trying to figure out if there was anyone left she had not called, any options she had not explored, any miracle she had not yet prayed for. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer, but desperation made her reckless. She pressed accept. "Is this Nora Wallace?" A woman's voice. Professional. Efficient. "Yes." "This is the billing department at St. Mary Hospital. I'm calling to inform you that your account has been settled in full." Nora's mind went blank. She could not process the words. They did not make sense. "What, your account? The outstanding balance of $51,000 plus the $3,400 for the new course of treatment. It's been paid. We're authorizing treatment for your daughter immediately." "I don't understand. Who paid it?" "The payment came through as an anonymous wire transfer. I don't have any additional information about the source." Nora sat there in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, unable to speak, unable to think. The world had tilted on its axis. Reality had fractured into something she could not comprehend. "Ms. Wallace, are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here. Dr. Sutherland will be starting your daughter's treatment within the hour. You're all set." The call ended. Nora stared at her phone for a long time, trying to make sense of what had just happened. $54,400, paid by an anonymous donor, just hours before her daughter would have been denied treatment. It was not possible. Things like this did not happen. Not to people like her, not in the real world. But it had happened. Someone had saved her daughter's life, and she had no idea who. Except she did. Somewhere deep down, she knew exactly who. Within 2 hours, Lily's treatment began. The specialized antibiotics were administered through an IV drip. Nora sat beside her daughter's bed, holding her small hand, watching the medicine flow into her veins. Dr. Sutherland came to check on them. She's responding well, the doctor said. The fever should start coming down within 12 to 14 hours. Barring any complications, she should make a full recovery. Nora could not speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of despair this time. Tears of relief so overwhelming it felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. After the doctor left, Nora sat alone with her daughter. Lily was sleeping. Her breathing had already started to sound less labored. Her skin felt cooler. The color was slowly returning to her cheeks. Nora thought about the money, about the anonymous wire transfer, about the timing. 20 hours after she had met Harrison Cole at this hospital. 20 hours after she had given him back his $5,000. 20 hours after she had told him about Lily. It could not be a coincidence. She checked the date and time of the transaction on the billing statement. The payment had been made at 11:37 in the morning, 3 days after her encounter with Harrison Cole. She looked up news articles about Ethan Cole, found a brief mention in the business section dated that same morning. Ethan Cole, son of tech billionaire Harrison Cole, moved out of ICU and into recovery. Family spokesperson says prognosis is good. Recovering, not dying, not in critical condition. Recovering. Harrison Cole's son had survived. And somehow in the midst of his own crisis in the hours after his son had been moved to a recovery room, Harrison had remembered her. Remembered Lily. Remembered the conversation in the hospital lobby when Nora had told him to go to his son. When she had said that was what parents do. They show up. They endure. They choose their children over everything else. Had she changed something in that moment? Had her words meant something? The timing was too precise to be coincidence. But Nora would never know for certain. The payment was anonymous, untraceable. A ghost transaction that had appeared out of nowhere and changed everything. If it was Harrison Cole, why had he done it? Out of guilt, out of gratitude, out of some sense of obligation to the woman who had returned his money in the rain? Or was it something else, something deeper? Some recognition that her choice had meant something. That integrity was not just an abstract concept. That the person she had chosen to be in that moment when no one was watching had mattered after all. She would probably never know the answer. But as she sat there watching her daughter sleep, feeling the weight of the last 8 months finally lifting from her chest, she realized something. It did not matter why. What mattered was that Lily was going to be okay. What mattered was that she had made a choice she could live with. What mattered was that when she looked at her daughter tomorrow and the day after that, and the day after that, she would not have to lie about who she was. She had done the right thing, even when it hurt, even when it cost her everything, even when it seemed like the stupidest decision in the world, and somehow impossibly it had been enough. 2 days later, Lily's fever broke. Her eyes opened. She looked at her mother and smiled. "Mama, I'm hungry." Nora laughed and cried at the same time. "Yeah, baby, let's get you some food." Over the next 48 hours, Lily continued to improve. The infection retreated. The antibiotics did their work. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. By the end of the week, they were talking about discharge. Ruth came to visit every day. She would sit in the chair beside Lily's bed, reading stories and singing old songs from when Nora was a child. Sometimes Nora would catch her mother looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. Pride, maybe, or relief, or just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the values she had tried to instill in her daughter had taken root. On the 6th day, Nora asked the billing department again about the anonymous payment. They confirmed what they had told her before. Wire transfer, no name attached, no way to trace it back to its source. But Nora no longer needed confirmation. She knew. At work, the atmosphere had shifted. Esther still did not speak to her much. But one evening as they were closing up, she pulled Nora aside. "I heard about Lily," Esther said quietly, "that she's okay, that someone paid the bills." "Yeah." "Was it him, the billionaire?" Nora shrugged. "I don't know for certain. The payment was anonymous." Esther looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Maybe I was wrong about what I said before, about you being foolish." "You weren't wrong. You were being practical." "No," Esther shook her head. "I was being scared. I've been scared for so long that I forgot there was any other way to be. I forgot that sometimes doing the right thing actually matters, that sometimes the universe pays attention." She reached out and squeezed Nora's hand, just for a second. Then she let go and went back to wiping down tables. Even Dion had stopped making comments. He still watched her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read, but the mockery was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect, or confusion, or just the quiet acknowledgement that maybe he had been wrong about something he thought he understood. On the seventh day after the anonymous payment, Nora received a phone call at work. It was early evening. The dinner rush was just starting. She was in the middle of taking an order when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it, but then it buzzed again and again. During her break, she checked her messages. Unknown number. Ms. Wallace, this is Jennifer Chen from Cole Dynamics. Mr. Cole would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience. Please call this number when you have a moment. Nora stared at the message for a long time. So it had been him, the anonymous payment, the miracle that had saved her daughter's life. Part of her wanted to ignore the message, to let sleeping dogs lie. She had her daughter back. The bills were paid. Her life could return to some semblance of normal. What more could there be to say? But another part of her knew she could not ignore it. Whatever Harrison Cole wanted to say, whatever reason he had for reaching out, she owed him at least the courtesy of listening. She called the number. Jennifer answered on the second ring. Professional, efficient. Ms. Wallace, thank you for calling back. Mr. Cole would like to meet with you. Would tomorrow evening work, 7 o'clock at the Belmont Sterling? Nora hesitated. He wants to meet at my workplace. Yes, he thought it might be more comfortable for you, more familiar territory. More comfortable, as if anything about this situation was comfortable. Okay, tomorrow at 7. Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Wallace. The call ended. Nora stood there in the break room, phone in her hand, trying to understand what was happening. Harrison Cole wanted to meet with her at her restaurant. Tomorrow, the man whose son had almost died, the man who had received his money back from a stranger in the rain, the man who had apparently paid her daughter's medical bills with no expectation of acknowledgement or gratitude. What could he possibly want? That night, Nora could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario in her mind. Maybe he wanted to meet her so he could ask for the money back. Some kind of loan agreement, payment plan, interest rate. She would agree to anything. $54,000 was still $54,000, even if it had been given freely. Or maybe he wanted something else, some kind of public acknowledgement, a press release, a photo opportunity. Rich billionaire helps poor single mother. Good for his image, good for his company's reputation. She could do that too if that was what he wanted. It would be uncomfortable, humiliating even. But she could endure it. For Lily, she could endure anything. Or maybe it was something simpler. Maybe he just wanted to know that the money had made a difference, that his generosity had not been wasted, that the woman who had returned his $5,000 was not a liar or a con artist or someone trying to manipulate him. She could give him that reassurance. She could thank him properly. She could let him know that he had saved her daughter's life. But as she lay there in the dark, another possibility occurred to her, one that seemed too impossible to consider, but that her mind kept returning to anyway. What if he wanted to offer her something? Not charity, not handouts, but something else, something that had nothing to do with pity and everything to do with the choice she had made that night in the rain. She pushed the thought away. It was too much to hope for, too ridiculous to even consider. But it lingered anyway, a small, stubborn seed of possibility that refused to be ignored. The next evening, Nora arrived at the Belmont Sterling an hour early. She wanted time to compose herself, to prepare for whatever was coming. Mr. Clayton raised an eyebrow when he saw her walk in during her night off. You're not on the schedule tonight. I know, I'm meeting someone. Who? Harrison Cole. Clayton's expression changed instantly. Suspicion replaced by confusion, replaced by something that might have been respect. The Harrison Cole, the billionaire? Yeah. Clayton stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I'll make sure you have privacy. Use the small dining room in the back. At exactly 7 o'clock, Harrison Cole walked through the front door. He looked different than he had at the hospital. More composed, more like the man in the magazine photos. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of presence that made people turn their heads without quite knowing why. But when he saw Nora, his expression softened. Something in his eyes looked almost vulnerable. Ms. Wallace, thank you for agreeing to meet with me. You paid my daughter's medical bills, Nora said quietly. The least I can do is hear what you have to say. Harrison smiled. Let's sit down. They moved to the small dining room, private, quiet, just the two of them and whatever came next. Harrison did not waste time with small talk, but before he spoke about anything else, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Before we talk about anything else, I want you to see this. Nora opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter on cream-colored stationery. The handwriting was young, slightly messy, but sincere. Dear Ms. Wallace, my name is Ethan Cole. You don't know me, but you saved my life. Not in the way the doctors did. They fixed my body. You fixed something more important. You gave me back my father. That night in the hospital when you told my dad to come to me even if I didn't want him there, you changed everything. He showed up. For the first time in 3 years, he actually showed up. And we talked, really talked. I don't know if I would have survived without that, not the physical injuries, but the other stuff, the depression, the loneliness, the feeling that nobody cared. You gave me hope when I had none. You reminded my father what it means to be a parent. And you did it even though you were going through your own hell with your daughter. I heard what he did, paying for Lily's treatment. It's the least we could do, but I wanted to write this myself because I need you to know what you did mattered. Not just for my dad, for me. Thank you for being brave enough to tell a stranger the truth when he needed it most. With gratitude, Ethan Cole Nora's hands were shaking when she finished reading. She looked up at Harrison, and for the first time, she saw tears in his eyes. That's why I'm here, Harrison said quietly. Not to give you charity, not to ease my conscience, but because my son is alive because of you. And if he's learned anything from almost dying, it's that we don't waste chances to do the right thing. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. Nora picked it up with trembling fingers. Harrison Cole, CEO, Cole Dynamics. And beneath that, a handwritten note. Director of Integrity and Oversight, Cole Foundation. $120,000 per year. Health insurance fully covered. 6-month probationary period to prove yourself. After that, permanent position if we both agree it's working. Nora stared at the card. Read the note 3 times. 4 times, trying to make sense of the words. I don't understand. My foundation gives away $40 million a year, Harrison said, and I honestly have no idea if that money is doing any good. I have a staff of 20 people managing it, and I don't trust any of them. They tell me what I want to hear. They produce reports that look impressive, but mean nothing. They waste money on overhead and bureaucracy and their own salaries. He looked at her directly. I need someone I can trust. Someone who will do the right thing even when no one is watching. Someone who can't be bought or influenced or corrupted. Someone who chose principles over survival when it mattered most. I'm just a waitress. I don't have a college degree in nonprofit management. I've been out of professional work for 18 years. I know all of that. I had you investigated. He said it matter-of-factly without apology. I know about Meridian Trust, about the scandal 18 years ago, about the CFO who embezzled $90 million and made you take the fall. Nora felt her stomach drop. Then you know I was fired, blacklisted, that no one in the industry would hire me. I know that you were innocent, that you did exactly what you were supposed to do, that you reported fraud and were punished for it. Harrison's voice was firm. And I know that despite everything that happened to you, despite every reason you had to become bitter or cynical or to stop caring about doing the right thing, you didn't. You're still the same person who tried to stop that fraud 18 years ago. You're still the person who returned $5,000 in the rain. He tapped the business card. That's what I need. Not credentials, not recent experience. Character. And that's something I can't teach. You either have it or you don't. Nora looked at the card in her hands. $120,000. More money than she had ever imagined earning. Health insurance for Lily. A real job, a real future. But something held her back. Is this because you feel sorry for me? Harrison met her eyes. If I wanted to give you charity, I would have written a check and never seen you again. I'm here because I've spent my entire career surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. You told me the truth when I needed it most. That's not something money can buy. I need time to think about it, Nora said finally. A week. I don't want to make this decision out of desperation. If I take this job, I want it to be because I chose it, not because I had no other options. Harrison nodded. Take all the time you need. He reached into his jacket again and pulled out a second envelope, placed it on the table between them. One more thing. The receptionist at the hospital gave this back to me. She said a woman left it at the desk and asked her to make sure I received it. He opened the envelope. Inside was $5,000 in cash, the original money from the restaurant. This was the tip I meant to leave for the staff that night. I was in such a hurry, I forgot to make sure it got distributed properly. This is your share. You worked that night. You earned it. Nora looked at the money, the same bill she had held in her hands a week ago. The same decision, but different now, changed by everything that had happened since. This isn't charity, Harrison said before she could object. This is payment for services rendered. You worked. This is your compensation. Nothing more, nothing less. Slowly, carefully, Nora picked up the envelope. The weight of it felt different now. Not like stealing, not like accepting a handout, but like something she had actually earned. Something that belonged to her. Thank you. Harrison stood, extended his hand. I'll see you in a week, Ms. Wallace. Whatever you decide. They shook hands, and for the first time in 18 years, Nora felt like someone saw her for who she really was. Not a waitress, not a victim, not a charity case, but a person of value, a person whose choices mattered, a person whose integrity was worth something in a world that had tried to convince her it was worth nothing at all. 1 week later, Lily was discharged from the hospital. Nora carried her daughter out of the building in her arms, even though Lily insisted she could walk on her own. But Nora needed to hold her, needed to feel the weight of her daughter's body against her chest, needed the physical proof that this small person was still alive, still breathing, still here. Ruth was waiting at the apartment when they arrived. She had cleaned the entire place, made Lily's bed with fresh sheets, cooked chicken soup that filled the small space with warmth and the smell of home. That night, they ate together at the kitchen table, just the three of them. Lily was weak but hungry. She ate slowly, carefully, telling them about the nurses she had liked and the TV shows she had watched and the dreams she had when the fever was at its worst. I dreamed about Grandpa, Lily said quietly. The one I never met. Your dad, Mama. Nora's hand froze halfway to her mouth. What did you dream? He was standing in a garden, and he told me it wasn't time yet, that I had to go back, that you needed me. Ruth made a small sound, something between a sob and a laugh. That sounds like Thomas, always thinking about others. After dinner, Nora tucked Lily into bed. Her daughter's room was small, barely big enough for the twin bed and a small dresser. But it was hers, and tonight it felt like the most precious space in the world. Mama, Lily's voice was sleepy. Are you okay? I'm okay, baby. Why? You've been sad, I could tell, even when you smiled. Nora sat on the edge of the bed, smoothed her daughter's hair back from her forehead. I was worried about you, that's all. But I'm okay now. Yeah, you're okay now. Lily was quiet for a moment, then, the money for the hospital, where did it come from? Nora had been wondering when this question would come. Someone helped us. The man, the one whose money you gave back. So Lily had heard about that. Ruth must have told her. Or maybe she had overheard one of Nora's phone conversations. Children always knew more than you thought they did. Yes, I think so. Why did he help us? I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people do good things. Sometimes kindness comes from unexpected places. Lily nodded, satisfied with that answer. Her eyes were already starting to close. Mama? Yeah. I'm glad you gave the money back, even if it was hard. Why try? Because now I know when things are hard, you still do the right thing. And that means I can too. Nora felt tears building but held them back. Go to sleep, baby. Love you, Mama. Love you too. She sat there until Lily's breathing became deep and regular, until she was certain her daughter was truly asleep. Then she went to her own room and let the tears come. Not from sadness this time, from something else. Something that felt like gratitude and exhaustion and hope all mixed together. The next morning, Nora stood in front of the mirror, trying to see herself as something other than a waitress. She had spent the past week thinking about Harrison Cole's offer, turning it over in her mind from every angle, looking for the catch, the hidden cost, the strings that must be attached. But no matter how hard she looked, she could not find them. The job was real, the salary was real, the opportunity was real. And it had been offered not out of pity, but out of respect for a choice she had made when everything was on the line. Still doubt lingered. She was 52 years old. She had not worked in finance for 18 years. The industry had changed. The technology had evolved. She would be competing with people half her age who had master's degrees and professional certifications and networks of connections she could never hope to match. What if she failed? What if Harrison Cole realized he had made a mistake? What if she proved to be exactly as worthless as the world had told her she was for the past 18 years? Ruth found her standing there staring at her reflection. You're thinking too much, her mother said. I'm trying to be realistic. No, you're trying to talk yourself out of something you deserve. Nora turned to look at her mother. Ruth was wearing her old bathrobe, the one with the frayed edges and the coffee stain on the sleeve that never quite came out. Her hair was uncombed, her face bare of makeup, but her eyes were sharp and clear. What if I'm not good enough? Then you'll learn, and you'll get better. That's what people do. What if I fail? Ruth stepped closer, took Nora's face in her hands the way she used to when Nora was a child. Baby girl, you've already survived the worst thing that can happen to a mother. You watched your child fight for her life. And you did it while working 3 jobs, while drowning in debt, while the whole world told you that you didn't matter. She held Nora's gaze. And in the middle of all that, when you had every reason to take something that wasn't yours, you chose not to. You chose to be the person you wanted your daughter to see, even when it cost you everything. Ruth's voice was fierce now, proud. If you can do that, you can do anything. Don't you dare let fear stop you now. Not after everything you've survived. Nora felt something shift inside her. Some weight she had been carrying for 18 years finally starting to lift. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. That afternoon, Nora put on the nicest clothes she owned, a second-hand blazer she had bought at a thrift store 3 years ago for a job interview that never materialized. A white blouse that was slightly too big but still looked professional. Black pants that were starting to wear thin at the knees but would pass in dim lighting. She looked at herself in the mirror one more time. Not perfect, not polished, but presentable, trying. Lily was sitting on the bed watching her mother get ready. She was still weak, but her color was better. Her eyes were bright again. Where are you going, Mama? I'm going to a job interview, baby. For what? A new job, at a foundation. It would mean helping people, making sure money goes where it's supposed to go. Is it because you did the right thing with the money? Nora knelt down beside her daughter's bed. I don't know if it's because of that, but I do know that when you make hard choices, when you choose to be good, even when it costs you, sometimes the universe notices. Sometimes it matters. Lily smiled. You're going to get the job. How do you know? Because you're my mama, and you're the best person I know. Nora kissed her daughter's forehead. I love you so much. I know. Now go. Don't be late. The Cole Foundation offices were in Midtown Manhattan, occupying 3 floors of a glass and steel building that seemed to touch the sky. Nora had taken the subway there, emerging onto a street full of people in expensive suits, carrying briefcases and talking into wireless earbuds about deals and deadlines and deliverables. She felt out of place immediately, like an imposter, like someone pretending to be something she was not. But she thought about Ruth's words, about Lily's smile, about the choice she had made in the rain, and she walked through those glass doors anyway. The lobby was all marble and modern art. A receptionist who looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine directed Nora to the elevators. 17th floor, conference room B. When the elevator doors opened, Nora found herself in a hallway lined with photographs. Images of the foundation's work around the world. Schools being built. Medical clinics opening. Families receiving aid. All funded by Harrison Cole's billions. How much of this was real? How much of it was just for show? How much money had been wasted? How much had actually reached the people who needed it? That was what she would be there to find out, if she got the job. Conference room B was at the end of the hallway. Through the glass walls, she could see Harrison Cole sitting at a long table with 2 other people. A man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive watch. A woman in her 40s wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Nora's monthly rent. Nora took a breath, knocked on the door. Harrison stood immediately, smiled. Ms. Wallace, thank you for coming. Please sit down. He introduced the others. This is Gerald Morrison, chairman of our board of directors, and Catherine Hunt, our current director of operations. Nora shook their hands, tried to match their confidence with her own, tried not to feel like she was drowning. Gerald spoke first. His voice was polite but skeptical. Ms. Wallace, Harrison has told us about your encounter and about your background at Meridian Trust. But I have to be honest, you haven't worked in finance for 18 years. The industry has changed significantly in that time. What makes you think you're qualified for this position? It was a fair question, one Nora had been asking herself for the past week. She could have deflected, could have given some generic answer about being a fast learner, or a hard worker, or someone willing to do whatever it takes. But she had promised herself that if she did this, she would do it honestly. No pretense, no false confidence, just the truth. You're right, she said. I'm not qualified, not in the traditional sense. I don't have recent experience. I don't have connections in the industry. I don't have an MBA or any of the credentials that someone in this position should have. Catherine raised an eyebrow, surprised by the candor. Nora continued, but I do have something that you can't teach and can't buy. I have 18 years of watching people waste money like it doesn't matter. Like it's just numbers on a spreadsheet instead of the difference between life and death for families like mine. She looked at Harrison, then at Gerald, then at Catherine. I know what $100 means to someone who's deciding between rent and food. I know what $5,000 means when your daughter is dying and the hospital won't treat her. I know what $50,000 means when it's the difference between hope and despair. Her voice was steady now, strong. You want someone who will protect your money, someone who will make sure every dollar goes where it's supposed to go, someone who will treat your foundation's funds like they're sacred. I'll do that. Because I know that on the other end of every dollar you give away, there's a person like me, someone who's drowning, someone who needs help, someone whose entire life might change because of what you do. The room was silent. Then Catherine spoke. That's a beautiful speech, Ms. Wallace. But running a foundation requires more than passion. It requires knowledge of nonprofit law, grant management, financial auditing, regulatory compliance. How do you plan to address those gaps in your expertise? Another fair question. Another opportunity to be honest. I'll learn, Nora said simply. I've learned harder things. I learned how to be a single mother. I learned how to survive on a waitress's salary. I learned how to advocate for my daughter in a medical system that didn't want to listen to me. I learned how to choose integrity over survival when every part of me was screaming to do the opposite. She met Catherine's eyes. Teach me what I need to know. Give me the resources to get up to speed. And I promise you I will work harder than anyone you've ever hired. Because this isn't just a job to me. It's a chance to make sure that what happened to my family doesn't happen to someone else if it can be prevented. Gerald leaned back in his chair, studied her. Harrison said you asked for a week to think about the offer. Why? Because I didn't want to accept out of desperation. I wanted to make sure that if I took this job, it was because I believed I could do it, not because I had no other choice. And do you believe you can do it? Nora thought about that for a moment, really thought about it. Not about what they wanted to hear, but about the truth. Honestly, I don't know. I might fail. I might not be good enough. I might realize that 18 years is too long to be away from this world. She paused. But I also know that I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm not afraid of admitting when I don't know something. And I'm not afraid to do the right thing even when it's uncomfortable. Those are the qualities I can promise you. The rest we'll have to figure out together. The interview lasted another 40 minutes. Catherine asked detailed questions about Nora's work at Meridian Trust, about the fraud case she had uncovered, about the methods she had used to identify the embezzlement, about how she would approach similar situations now. Nora answered as honestly as she could, sometimes admitting she did not know, sometimes explaining what she remembered and acknowledging what she had forgotten, never pretending to be more than she was. Gerald asked about her life now, about how she would balance the demands of with being a single mother, about whether she had reliable childcare, about what would happen if Lily had another health crisis. Nora told him the truth, that Ruth would help, that Lily's prognosis was good, that she would do whatever it took to make it work, but that yes, her daughter would always come first. And if that was a problem, then this job was not for her. Harrison asked only one question. Why do you want this job, Nora? She thought about all the possible answers, about the money, about the opportunity, about the chance to rebuild a career that had been destroyed 18 years ago. But in the end, she gave him the simplest truth. Because for 18 years, I've been invisible. People look through me, talk over me, treat me like I don't exist. And maybe that's fair. Maybe I'm not important. Maybe I'm just one more struggling person in a city full of struggling people. She met his eyes, but I had a chance to do something that mattered. One choice. One moment when I could decide who I really was. And I chose right, even when it cost me everything, even when everyone told me I was being stupid. Her voice softened. This job is a chance to prove that choice meant something. That integrity isn't just a luxury for people who can afford it. That doing the right thing matters, even for people like me. Harrison smiled, not the polished professional smile from the magazine covers, but something genuine, something that reached his eyes. Gerald, Catherine, do you have any other questions? They both shook their heads. Then I think we're done here. Harrison stood. Miss Wallace, you've been offered the position, 6-month probationary period. Catherine will be your supervisor for the first 3 months. Learn everything you can from her, prove yourself, and after 6 months, if we all agree it's working, the position becomes permanent. Nora felt tears building behind her eyes. Thank you. You start Monday. 9 a.m. Welcome to the Cole Foundation. 3 months later, Nora sat in her office on the 17th floor reviewing grant applications. The learning curve had been steep. Catherine had not been exaggerating when she said she was tough. The first month had been overwhelming. Financial reports, regulatory requirements, nonprofit law, grant management systems, due diligence protocols. It felt like drinking from a fire hose. But Nora had kept her promise. She worked harder than anyone else. Stayed late, asked questions, admitted when she did not understand something. Slowly, painfully, she started to get her footing. By the end of the second month, she had identified 3 irregularities in the foundation's grant distribution. Small things, nothing criminal, but patterns that suggested inefficiency and waste. She brought them to Catherine's attention. Catherine was impressed. By the end of the third month, Nora had implemented a new oversight system that would save the foundation approximately $200,000 a year while ensuring that money reached the intended recipients more efficiently. Harrison called her into his office to congratulate her. "You're doing exactly what I hoped you would do," he said. "Finding problems, fixing them, making sure the money goes where it's supposed to go. That's the job." "No, that's character. The job is just the framework. What you're doing with it, that comes from who you are." Now sitting in her office, Nora looked at the grant application in front of her, St. Mary Hospital, Pediatric Oncology Department, requesting $450,000 for equipment upgrades and expanded patient support services. She knew this department, had spent 8 months in those waiting rooms, had watched her daughter receive treatment there, had felt the fear and desperation that every parent in that ward carried like a weight on their chest. The application was thorough, well documented, the need was clear, the impact would be significant. Nora picked up her pen and wrote one word across the approval section. Approved. Then she signed her name. Not Nora the waitress, not Nora the victim, but Nora Wallace, Director of Integrity and Oversight, Cole Foundation. A person whose choices had mattered. A person whose integrity had been worth something. A person who had proven that doing the right thing, even when it cost everything, could lead somewhere good. 2 weeks later, Nora returned to the Belmont Sterling one last time. Not to work, but to say goodbye properly. Esther was wiping down tables when Nora walked in. The older woman looked up, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "So you're really not coming back," Esther said finally. "No, but I wanted to thank you for everything you taught me." Esther set down her rag. "I didn't teach you anything worth knowing. I taught you to keep your head down, to be invisible, to survive instead of live. You taught me how to endure. That's worth something." Esther's eyes were bright. "I'm proud of you, even if I didn't show it before, even if I thought you were being foolish. I'm proud that you had the courage to be better than the rest of us." They hugged, brief but genuine. 18 months of working side by side. 2 women who had survived in different ways, both doing the best they could with what they had. Dion was behind the bar organizing bottles. When he saw Nora, he stopped. "Heard you're a big shot now, director of something important. Integrity and oversight, for a foundation." He nodded slowly. "Makes sense. You were always too good for this place." "I wasn't too good. I was just trying to be someone my daughter could look up to." Dion was quiet for a moment, then, "That night, when you gave back the money, I thought you were the biggest fool I'd ever met, throwing away your only chance because of some misguided sense of morality." "I know. I don't think that anymore." He extended his hand. "You proved me wrong. You proved that doing the right thing actually can matter, that sometimes the universe pays attention. I'm glad one of us got out." She shook his hand. "You could too, you know. Get out, find something better." "Maybe, but I'm not as brave as you." As she left the Belmont Sterling, for the last time, Nora thought about how easy it would be to resent this place. The years she had spent here, the way she had been treated, the invisibility. But she did not resent it, because this place had given her something important. It had given her a choice, and she had chosen right. And that choice had changed everything. 6 months after starting at the Cole Foundation, Nora sat in Harrison's office for her evaluation. Gerald and Catherine were there too. All 3 of them had reports in front of them, assessments of her performance, metrics and evaluations and data points that would determine whether this opportunity became permanent or whether she would have to start over again. Harrison spoke first. "Nora, we've reviewed your work over the past 6 months. Catherine has documented several significant improvements you've implemented in our oversight systems. Gerald has noted your attention to detail and your commitment to ensuring funds reach their intended recipients. He paused. Nora held her breath. There's no question that you've exceeded our expectations. The position is yours permanently if you want it. Relief washed over her. But it was not just relief. It was validation. Proof that she had been right. That the choice she had made in the rain had meant something. That integrity was not just an abstract concept, but something with real value in the real world. I want it, she said. Thank you. Catherine spoke next. You've earned it, Nora. I was skeptical at first. I thought Harrison was making a decision based on emotion rather than qualifications. But you've proven me wrong. You work harder than anyone I've supervised. And more importantly, you care. You treat this foundation's money like it's sacred. That's rare. Gerald nodded. I agree. Welcome to the permanent staff, Ms. Wallace. After the meeting, Harrison asked Nora to stay behind. How's Lily? He asked when they were alone. She's good, really good, in remission, back in school, being a normal kid again. And your mother? Saw a doctor finally. Turns out she has mild COPD. Nothing serious if she manages it properly, which she can now because I have health insurance that covers her. Harrison smiled. I'm glad. I never properly thanked you, Nora said, for paying the hospital bills, for giving me this job, for seeing something in me that I had stopped seeing in myself. You don't have to thank me. You gave me my son back. That's worth more than any amount of money. How is Ethan? Better, much better. We talk every day now, real conversations. He's back in college, seeing a therapist, working through things. Harrison's expression softened. He asks about you sometimes, about the woman in the rain who told his father to show up. He wants to meet you properly someday, to thank you in person. I'd like that. He's working on something, a nonprofit focused on mental health support for young adults. He wants to use what he went through to help other people. He's even talking about joining the foundation after he graduates. Harrison's voice was thick with emotion. That night changed both of our lives, Nora. You gave me back my son. You gave him back his father. You showed both of us what it means to do the right thing, even when it costs everything. He reached across the desk and squeezed her hand. Thank you for being brave when I was too afraid, for being good when the world told you it didn't matter, for being exactly who you are. 1 year after that night in the rain, Nora stood in front of a St. Mary hospital. She was not here for an appointment. Lily did not need treatment today. She was here for something else. Inside, she found the fourth-floor waiting room where she had spent so many hours. The same uncomfortable chairs, the same fluorescent lights, the same fear hanging in the air like a presence you could almost touch. But now she saw it differently, not as a victim, not as someone drowning, but as someone who had survived, someone who had a chance to make a difference. She found the nurse's station, asked to speak to the department head, introduced herself as the representative from Cole Foundation. The grant you applied for, she said, the $450,000 for equipment and patient support services. It's been approved. The funds will be transferred next month. The department head, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, stared at Nora in disbelief. Are you serious? Completely. We'll need quarterly reports on how the funds are being used. But yes, it's approved. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Do you know how many children this will help? How many families? Nora thought about sitting in that waiting room, about the fear and the desperation and the impossible choices, about all the other mothers sitting there right now wondering if their children would survive. Yeah, she said quietly, I know exactly how many. That evening, Nora picked up Lily from school. Her daughter was doing well. The cancer was still in remission. She had started third grade 3 months ago. Her hair had grown back longer than before, dark and curly like Nora's. She smiled more now, laughed, complained about homework like a normal 8-year-old instead of a child who had spent months fighting for her life. How was school? Nora asked as they walked toward the subway. Good. We learned about heroes today. What kind of heroes? All kinds. Firefighters and doctors and people who do brave things. What did you think? Lily was quiet for a moment. I think heroes are people who do the right thing even when it's hard, even when no one is watching. Like you, Mama. Nora's throat tightened. I'm not a hero, baby. I'm just your mom. That's what makes you a hero. You chose to be good even when it was hard, even when you could have done something else. And that matters more than anything. They rode the subway home in comfortable silence. Lily leaned against her mother's shoulder, tired from a long day at school. Nora held her close and thought about everything that had changed in 1 year. She was no longer drowning. The bills were paid. The rent was current. Ruth's health was stable. The apartment was still small and the walls were still stained, but it was home. And it was enough. More than enough. That night, after Lily was in bed, after Ruth had retired to her room, Nora sat alone in the living room. She thought about the envelope Harrison had given her that night, the $5,000 that had been her share of the tip. Money she had earned, not charity. She had used most of it, caught up on bills, bought Lily new clothes for school, taken Ruth to a nice dinner for her birthday, built a small emergency fund so that the next crisis would not destroy them. But she had kept $100 bill, framed it, hung it on the wall in her bedroom where she could see it every morning. Not as a trophy, not as a reminder of what she had almost taken, but as a symbol of who she had chosen to be when it mattered most. The choices we make when no one is watching. Those are the choices that define us. And on that night in the rain, when everything was on the line, Nora Wallace had chosen well. She had chosen integrity over survival, conscience over desperation, the person she wanted to be over the person the world was pushing her to become. And in the end, that choice had made all the difference. Not because it guaranteed a happy ending, not because it ensured that good would be rewarded, but because it meant that when she looked in the mirror, she could meet her own eyes without shame. That was the real reward. That was what mattered. That was what would last long after the money was spent and the job was over and the story was forgotten. The knowledge that once, when it counted, she had been brave enough to choose right, and that was enough. 5 years later, Lily was 12 years old now, still in remission, thriving. She had joined the math team at school and talked about becoming a doctor someday. When people asked why, she would say, "Because my mom taught me that helping people matters more than anything else." Ruth had passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 years after Nora started at the foundation. She died knowing her daughter was safe, that Lily would be okay, that the family she had protected for so long would survive without her. Her last words to Nora had been simple: "Your father would be so proud." Ethan Cole had finished college and started his nonprofit. Harrison had funded the initial operations, but Ethan was building it himself, learning, growing, using his pain to help others. He and his father talked every day. The relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real. Harrison had expanded the foundation's work with Nora's oversight, ensuring every dollar reached those who needed it most. Together, they had helped thousands of families, changed countless lives, made a real difference in a world that desperately needed it. But none of that mattered as much as the small moment that had started it all. A waitress, a billionaire, $5,000, and a choice made in the rain when no one was watching. That choice had rippled forward in ways Nora could never have predicted. Not because the universe was fair, not because good was always rewarded, but because character has its own gravity. Integrity has its own power. And sometimes when you choose to be the person you want your daughter to see, the world takes notice. Not always, not guaranteed, but sometimes, and sometimes is enough.